Now we come to the next measure of quantitative credit control, that is variable reserve ratio. Now what is reserve ratio? The amount of money that the commercial bank accepts as deposit, a part of it has to be reserved with the central bank out of every deposit. So commercial bank receives deposit from the public, and out of every deposit it has to keep a certain portion as reserve money with central bank. And what should be the reserve amount is dictated or given by the central bank. Now, when the variable reserve ratio increases, what are the consequences? That means the central bank asks the commercial banks to keep more money as reserve with the central bank. That means commercial banks' amount of money to use as loan decreases. So credit creating capacity of commercial banks will decrease as a result of rise in VRR. And when the credit creating capacity decreases, it will give out less loans, means money supply also falls. Now, due to the fall in money supply, people will demand less than the supply. So, aggregate supply in relation to demand will be more. Excess supply takes place. Now, this excess supply, in order to sell the products in the market, they have to reduce the price in order to increase the demand. So, the final result is decrease in price. Why it happened? Due to increase in variable reserve ratio by the central bank. The name is written variable because the reserve ratio is not fixed and it is varied by the central bank according to the time of emergency. So variable reserve ratio varies. It can be increased or decreased. When central bank increases the reserve ratio, the ultimate effect is price fall. It also indicates, that means previous there was problem of price rise or inflation, and in order to control the problem of inflation or increased prices need to be dropped down, for which the variable reserve ratio has been increased. Now we will study what are the effects if central bank reduces the reserve ratio. If the central bank reduces the reserve ratio, then commercial banks have to keep less of reserve money. That means more money will be available for loan. So credit creating capacity of the commercial banks will be more. As a result of which the money supply in the economy will be more. People will take more loans. It also indicates that they can demand now more, and it will result in excess demand. So demand greater than supply. So in order to remove the excess demand, prices have to be increased, because as prices increase, the demand drops down. So the ultimate effect of variable reserve ratio decrease is to increase the price. So why do you think that the central bank have reduced the variable reserve ratio? Just in order to increase the price. That means previously in the economy there was less price prevailing, which resulted in problem of deflation, and to overcome this problem the prices had to be increased through reserve ratio decrease. So questions can come like, in order to overcome deflation, what quantitative measure changes the RBI should take? So variable reserve ratio is one quantitative measure. In order to remove deflation, now you have seen the variable reserve ratio should go down in order to make the ultimate prices to increase and overcome any deflationary problem. Similarly, variable ratio has to be increased, which I just showed you before this, in order to bring a drop in the price. That means earlier there existed problem of inflation. Now if you see variable reserve ratio and bank rate, what is the similarity? The similarity is when both of these are decreased, it results in price rise and solves the problem of deflation. And when both are increased, that is bank rate and variable reserve ratio, when both are increased, it results in price drop, solving the problem of inflation. Now next, quantitative measure of credit control is OMO, that is open market operation. Now here what happens, the central bank engages in buying and selling of securities. Generally these securities are government securities, bonds. Now with whom does this buying and selling takes place? Now it is only in open market operation where you will see that central bank comes in contact not only with commercial banks but also general public. That means the buying and selling happens in between central bank on one side and on the other side commercial banks and general public. Now what happens if central bank engages in buying the securities? So when central bank engages in buying securities in open market, so when central bank is buying from general public or commercial banks, it gives money in return. So commercial banks as well as general public, they get hold over money. So on one side, commercial banks credit creating capacity increases, so it now can give more loan in the economy, as well as general public already have more money because the central bank has bought the securities this time. So general public got monetary return from central bank. So loan amount increases, the money supply overall in the economy increases due to loan, as well as the money with the general public, and they will now demand more. So aggregate demand increases and becomes greater than supply, and this aggregate demand rise. In order to cut down demand, the prices have to decrease to bring back the equilibrium between demand and supply. So when does central bank engages in buying securities in open market? When it wants people to get more loan, to increase the money supply, to increase the demand, and in order to cut the demand, what is needed? The price drop is needed. That means, when the demand becomes more than the supply, price increases. That means earlier what was the problem? Definitely the problem was deflation that the economy was suffering through, that is price fall. It is a problem of the producers. So what was needed? The effect that was needed is to increase the price, and for which the RBI or the central bank engaged in buying securities. Now just the opposite will happen if central bank in open market sells securities. So instead of buying now, if it tries to sell securities, we will see what are the results. Now it sells securities to whom? The commercial banks and the general public. Automatically what happens, when you are selling something, you get holdover money. So when the central bank sells to commercial banks and general public, it receives money from commercial and general public. So money supply with the public cuts down, and commercial bank also this time has less money at hand to give out loan. So loan decreases and overall money supply decreases because general public have bought the securities from the central bank and resulted in giving money, so they have less money at hand. Similarly, commercial banks have bought the securities which are sold by central bank, so they have given money, so they have less loan creating power, money supply reduces, and when money supply reduces, people have less money to demand, so demand becomes lesser than supply. Now, how to cut this excess supply situation? So this excess supply can be removed only if demand rises, and demand rises when the price falls. So the step taken by central bank to sell the securities resulted in price drop. Now how can you understand what the economy was suffering through? Definitely there was inflation for which central bank thought there is a need to reduce on the price, which can be happened only by selling securities. So questions come like, what are the steps taken by RBI to reduce or deflation or inflation? What are the changes? If the bank rate increases, what will happen? If the variable reserve ratio falls, what is the effect? In open market operations, if central bank engages in buying of securities, what problem it is wanting to solve? So these are the varied questions related to the quantitative measures of credit control.